This video is brought to you with support from my patrons on Patreon.
Hey everybody, it's Jimmy from the DIY and Digital, and today I've got 5 tips for designing and operating your small model railroad. Welcome back everybody. Today we're going to be talking about small model railroads. Now, a lot of us want those big basement empires, those big room spanning double-decker layouts, but the bottom line is most of us don't have the space for that. We would love to have it, but we don't. And I want to talk about ways that you can take your small model railroad and make it something that's not only fun to operate, but will stay being fun to operate. So let's go ahead and dive into 3 design tips and 2 operations tips. My first tip is for when you're really starting to build the scenery of your layout and build the base for it. I'm talking about the foam base, and you really want to add in some visual breaks. Having some areas where you can't see the train from all points of the layout, especially if you have a really small layout, can really make the layout feel a lot bigger than it is. Now, these breaks can be hillsides, these breaks can be buildings, these can be tunnels, things like that. Adding visual breaks will make your small model railroad feel larger than it is. Plus, it gives points of interest to where you see the trains coming and going, reappearing and disappearing. This is something that can really make your layout feel bigger. Number 2 on my design tips is to make your switching more complicated. Now, that doesn't mean put a ton of switches. That means orient the switches and make designs that require some thinking and kind of problem solving for moving and getting cars from point A to B, whether it's pulling them out of the siding, getting them into the siding, or making your runarounds more complicated to where to get in and out. It takes some thinking, and this can be a lot of fun, especially with operations. I'll give you an example of what I did on MRR1. You can see these 2 switches are oriented where I have to clear one industry before I can switch the other, and this just plays into my operations. So making your switching a little bit more complicated and a bit more like a puzzle is something that can keep your small model railroad fun. My number 3 tip is to look at your industry sidings and figure out how to make them multi-purpose. I have 3 ways that I typically do this. Number 1, and probably the most common for this type of thing, is to use what's called a team track. A team track is simply a siding that is used by multiple businesses or industries. Now, these industries by themselves do not have enough freight to warrant their own rail siding, so they all share this siding. They get a little less space. But what this does is it allows you to get multiple car types onto a single siding. So you could have tank cars you come in, you could have hopper cars, box cars, flat cars, all sorts of different things can be served on this one siding. Now for number 2, we can talk about how the industries can use multiple car types. So for instance, I have one industry on MRR1 that uses gondolas for its intake and box cars for what it sends out. So you have an industry that really takes in stuff and sends it out. That's a great way to have multiple car types right there, and that can lead to a lot of switching fun, which we'll get to in a minute. My number 3 is to have multiple industries on one siding. Now, you don't necessarily have to have multiple buildings. For instance, on mine, I have a warehouse that sits and is served by box cars, and then a miniature team track behind it that virtually any car can go on. You can see right here that I have a tank car. So those are 3 things that you can do to make your industries multi-purpose and keep your switching fun in the design phase. My last 2 tips are really involved in the operational side of running a small model railroad. And these things are things that you can add in that will make your op sessions more fun and add some more variety to them. So my first tip is to make rules and follow them. And what I mean by that is that real world railroads have to follow certain rules. And if you add some of these rules, you can add some variety and fun to your op sessions. Things like speed limits in certain areas of your layout, or you can only block a grade crossing for a certain amount of time before you have to let traffic clear. Things like that are very realistic things that you have to do in the real world that you can add to your small model railroad. Another great one, especially if you have a loop, is that you have to go around the loop a certain number of times before you can enter and exit the model railroad. So let's say you come in, you have to go around 3 times before you can start switching. It adds mileage to your run. This is a fun thing that can make your operation sessions a little longer, plus it gives you a little bit of a chance for some rail fanning. My last tip is to create multiple different types of operating schemes. Now, if you have a smaller railroad, this is one of the perks of it because you can create multiple ways to operate your model railroad. And you can add in fun things with things like chance cards, like in Monopoly. You can add things in like you have to wait this amount of time, or this car cannot be moved at this time, or a extra train's coming through that's going to drop off some cars that you have to switch in addition to what you already have to do. Things like that are fun things that you can add in. You really make it into more of a game. Now, there's a couple different operating styles you can do. The most common that I can think of is the sequence, where you go through a sequence of events that you have to do. Adding a clock to this, it makes it a lot more fun and definitely makes it more game-like. Of course, I have my train game operating session that I'll link right up here. So having multiple operation sessions and operation designs is something that is just a lot of fun and can keep things fresh and fun on your small model railroad. So there you have it, guys. 5 tips for designing and operating a small model railroad that will keep it fun for years to come. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I want to give a big thank you to all of my patrons. They are listed right here. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month. There's a link in the description. I also want to hear from you guys. I want to hear how you keep small model railroad operation sessions fun and the things that you do. You can leave that in the comments below. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and hit that bell icon so you don't miss any updates like this video. Until next time, I'm Jimmy from the DIY and Digital. Stay safe, be kind, and happy railroading. Hey everybody, it's Jimmy from the DIY and Digital. Today I have 5 Welcome back everybody. Today I want to cover a little bit of something that is... Nope, I don't. I can't say this right. It's a model railroad. That was a lot. How long was that? 22 minutes of recording for that little bit.